1 Berlin.
Welcome to Radio 1 Berlin. My name's Adrian Shephard, and today we're going to be interviewing the American sound artist Michael Northam, currently convalescing in Kerala in a bamboo hut in southern India. Are you there?
Hello?
Hello, Michael. Hello. Greetings.
Hi.
I hear it's mosquito time there.
It's evening twilight, and yes, it's the only time when the mosquitoes come out. But it's okay.
So you're about 4.5 hours ahead of Berlin. So here in Berlin, it's 2:20. So how late is it there then?
It's 6:30. 7 o'clock, sorry, 7 o'clock.
Can you briefly describe where you are?
I'm in kind of a island in the backwaters in Kerala called Maranvatu Turuttu. Turuttu is a word in Malayalam. Malayalam is the language that they speak in Kerala. And Turuttu means island. Maravan. So it's actually just a couple rivers and a canal, and it's not an island in the middle of like a large body of water.
Right.
But it's a land that's between rivers. And I just so happened, I had this surgery about a month ago in Ernakulam, which is nearby Kochi, which is a historical port town. This is like the part of the spice route that would have been, since a long time ago, a place where people would stop from all over the world.
Wow.
I heard when Europeans were going to China, they would stop here.
Right.
To avoid going through the violent territories where the Huns were killing each other in Central Asia. They would take a boat and come all the way around this way.
Wow.
Even it's said that Christianity was here in Kerala before in Europe in the year 4 or something like that. One of the apostles came here. There also is, it's basically if you're in Arabia and you put a boat with a sail, at a certain time of the year, you just run into Kerala. And then another part of the year, you put a sail in Kerala and you run into Arabia. So, and all the black pepper and cardamom and spices that the European royalty, and before that, the Romans, and before that, the Greeks, and also the Arabia wanted spices. This is where they would get the spices. So,
like a jungle where you are, is that right? Or you're on the edge of...
Yeah, it's pretty jungly. I've seen snakes in the water here. And there's mossy, stagnant riverways that are inside of the island that are quite mysteriously dark, jungly environments. And this bamboo hut is actually was made by apparently some Swiss people, and some eccentric Kerala doctor built it. So it's kind of looks like like anomalous here, but it's right along one river.
Right.
I can see some in a canoe right now in that kind of twilight going down the river. And there's coconut trees and betel nut, the thing that people chew, is in here. And there's lots of nutmeg. Actually, there are orchards here of nutmeg. And I see a papaya, and there's probably all sorts of other plants that I don't recognize entirely.
What kind of insects are around you then? You have ants?
There's plenty of ants. The lock of the door, when I put the key in the door, usually ants are pouring out. When I moved in here, one of the beds, I lifted up the mattress and there was an ant colony underneath the mattress.
Oh, Lord.
So they are actually everywhere. But I'm surprised that there's not really other insects I haven't seen. It's not as jungly wild as maybe Central America or other jungles. I think it's probably because of the population, and India is very vast. So there's been cultivation and people here and probably chemicals or I don't know what. So it might not be as wild and
certainly wilder than Berlin, that's for sure. Couldn't be.
It's and for me in India, it's one of the best places I've ever stayed at. One of the qualities is that it's I worked at like these neighbors are cooking food for me, so they deliver food because I don't have any cooking area here.
Okay.
So then I think I pay approximately, if I converted to euros, like €6 a day for 3 meals and accommodation.
Sounds
With
good.
like it's pretty private. There's a big yard.
Hmm.
It's one of the better situations I've ever been in. If anybody's interested, the landlord Prashant, the eccentric doctor, wanted to advertise the bamboo nest in
Right.
Kerala. So
Yes.
you
There you
could
go out
email
there.
me in coming to stay in the hut in Kerala in the backwaters. I will promote this place.
Very
Although it is
good.
very rustic. There
Mm.
are holes in the floor.
Mhm.
I can see holes through the floor. There's no screens or mosquito nets, but pretty much it's not that bad. It's just this time right now.
Mm.
There's some kind of animals living in the roof, probably
Okay.
a combination of squirrels or possums.
Okay.
I saw some rat-looking tail coming out of the thatched roof one night.
No giant spiders then.
Yes, there is a particular type of giant spider that's about as big as a person's hand.
Oh, great.
That but they're all over India. They're huntsman spiders. They're up in the Himalayas. They're very fragile and fast moving. And if you just at first I was scared of them, but they're pretty harmless.
Mm.
Although that being said, I think you can look up a huntsman spider on YouTube and you see one eating a giant centipede.
Wow.
So that's a ferocious looking thing. But they're actually really ferocious, but they're really, you just shush them away and they run. They help out. They eat things that
I guess.
are
Especially when it's mosquito
bad.
time as well, I guess.
And then there's some slugs that occupy my bathroom. One came all the way out to where I was sleeping one morning, but it's been a perfect place for healing.
Yeah.
I guess we could go backwards in time.
Let's
as far
do
as
that.
The story. So, like, I decided to have a hernia operation because prior to January 20th, my intestines were poking out of my belly button, increasingly more and more.
Thank you for
which
that
was quite
image.
annoying.
Mm.
Well, it's actually not that uncommon. It could happen to anyone. So be aware if some kind of squishy noise comes out of your belly button, you could be having a beginning of a hernia. But there's worse places that the hernia could be.
Yes, indeed.
Lower down.
So you're recovering from the operation, which you had.
Yeah, I had 5 piercings.
Oh.
I have like a really weird dimples now on my belly from 5 piercings that entered in and put a mesh underneath my stomach wall. And it was, I heard a nurse friend of mine from the US said that I paid 1/30th of the price that one would have to pay in the United States.
Oh, no. Crazy.
And it was quite an interesting, it was kind of a Catholic hospital and they would pray. They prayed right before the surgery.
Okay.
And the nuns would come in and check on me. And so I had to find my own apartment and I found this bamboo hut by myself. So that was...
How did you find it? I mean, how would you look up something like that then? I guess you're connected to the internet and,
you just look through and I generally have a thing where I would never use Airbnb because I think Airbnb is like the bane of the modern world, especially if you're moving around and trying to meet people, especially in the States, in the West Coast, trying to find a place to live is usually impossible because they would rather rent Airbnb than to an old friend. So I've avoided that, but then I have found in India that there's an interesting technique where you just use the Airbnb to spot or locate interesting places, and then there's a way of using like what do you call it, emojis to share contact information without Airbnb intercepting it, and then you just wheel and deal after just with direct communication.
Right.
And I came across this Airbnb bamboo hut, and the fellow was really interested to have some creative or somebody that would be willing also to, I mean, it was abandoned. Basically, he just comes out here to have some drinks with some buddies once every 3 months. And it was not set up for anyone to occupy. So I've had to like deal with it. But I think I have some training in dealing with wilderness situations. And the location is really amazing. I mean, just being on this side of the river. And,
Right.
it's actually something I've been wanting to do. I've always been attracted to Kerala. Normally people see the backwaters of Kerala on tourist boats or maybe government. They have government boats, which are essentially like ferry buses. But to be able to just lounge around and live on one of these jungle riversides is pretty nice. And having an excuse, to recover from the surgery, it's been a really nice time. anyway, I'm going to be headed next week north and returning back up to the Himalayas. And I'm still I'm not sure like where I'm supposed to be going. I was in India for 2.5 years from 2018 till the lockdown COVID period.
Right.
And but then I was kind of forced to return to the States, which is a very, I don't know, I have a love-hate relationship with that because I love the vast landscapes, and I managed to be able to get a vehicle and spend time camping out in the wilderness because I don't have any place to live in the US pretty much. So I'm pretty much homeless when I'm back there. And but surprisingly, I got an opportunity to be a caretaker at a temple, like a Tibetan Buddhist temple,
Right.
in Colorado. And through that strange happenstance, I was invited to a hidden Himalayan kingdom to teach sound design and sound art. It's a place above India, east of Nepal. And
cryptic location.
I got to, well, they like to keep it cryptic. It's a place that never was even allowed to have visitors until the 1970s. Not even that. And then now it's like really expensive to go there. But anyhow.
So you were invited to do workshops, sound workshops in this?
It was a vocational college of a paramilitary civil service group. And they operate under kind of a monarchy, and they had me teach these kind of guys and girls in fluorescent orange outfits. They're normally learning all sorts of vocational things or cooking, but there's even classes on crocheting and language and things like that. And I came over under the auspices on the tail end of a filmmaking class, and then I was like the sound engineer, but I called it, I was just really honest with them, and I said, I'm going to do creative sonic arts as an introduction to sound engineering. And so I made up a course, and they accepted it and hired me and brought me over. And so I was doing that for 4 months. And but yeah, that experience over there was fascinating because most of the students had never even grown up with speakers, hardly ever used a computer.
Right.
And I was trying to introduce them to sound art. So for them, that was a very, you can imagine, for me, I realized that sound art, so-called sound art, is very much a first world thing, where people have the luxury to have technology or speakers and work with media and mediated experiences. At that place over there, people weren't growing up with media other than like kind of through a bad television but this, within the last 10 years, even that corner of the world, everyone has smartphones. So it's going from no media to smartphones.
Yeah.
So, and, of course, the young people are kind of like wanting to do rap music or pop music. And they would respond, very intensely about their local music. But I tried to play for them every kind of genre. Every morning we had a 1-hour listening session, and I got very good speakers, and I got them to really maybe appreciate quality media. But I did feel like it was a little perverse in a way. I think sometimes media arts, which we're involved with, your radio show is about, and generally most of the people I know are engaged in as collectors, creators, or whatnot. But it's kind of a perverse thing that we're kind of simulating or creating some kind of reality through vibrating mechanisms that simulate like reality by and then or electronically making these kind of very whatever challenging sounds. I realize that when you're in a rural situation where people have grown up on farms and they know how to sing these ancient songs, and somehow they're immediately interested in rap. Rap for them is much more avant-garde somehow to them, or somehow more radical.
Right.
But when I played, I had one morning where I played Japanese noise music for them, and they were just like, what the hell? What is this? And then I would play, I would show them really authentic rap if they're into rap, but they had never even heard authentic rap. And then I would play them dub music like Lee Scratch Perry, and then I played field recordings and world music from like all sorts of different cultures, including their own culture. I played their own their culture is very influenced by Tibetan culture, and so I played that kind of music, and they didn't even know too much about their own traditional music. And so one of my ideas was to teach them about, doing ethnographical recordings and recording their own culture. I found out from the administration that they don't even have their own archives. They don't have media archives in that country. They don't. And even there was one fellow who died, like who was a master musician. And I asked people if they had recordings of this fellow, and they were like, "Why do you want recordings of him? There's other musicians that are living."
Okay.
Why would you want to listen to somebody who's dead when you could just listen to some living,
Interesting.
So the idea of recorded media or archives as a cultural kind of thing is a little abstract in their place. And so the long and short of it all is my class didn't really go over that well as far as the intended purpose, because the intended purpose was to help, economically build up the country, and people weren't really sure how to apply what I was teaching them. The most excitement came from like Foley and sound design for film. So we would do like clips from movies and take out all the sound and then have them create everything. So these people who grew up in villages who had never used computers and never had recorded anything, by the end of 3 months were doing complete sound design for film clips. And I wish I would have been able to get them involved with short films that the other class made. But there was, there's all this kind of, in a culture like that, there's a lot of like delicate interior politics and whatnot. So whatever. But it was an interesting experience.
What I wanted to talk about was, as a thank you that you made to some of the people that helped you get through your surgery, you released, or you sent out 2 albums. One was the traditional music from the this amazing place that you were teaching the workshops at, that shall remain unnamed, and to protect them, and your own album, which is called It Is Just a Name. There's some interesting information in that as well in itself. The title of the album, It Is Just a Name. Can you briefly talk about that?
Oh, it's kind of interesting because one of the first cassette tapes that I made in 1991, 92, maybe, I don't know. That cassette tape was called Another Object. And I've always had this kind of fascination with the generic, but I never actually knew why. And it just so happened that in this last 2 months being in Kerala, I was staying in this historical neighborhood, Tripunatura. And I really love the Malayalam script, which is like a super fascinating script here in southern India. It's hard to explain. You might have to, I don't know. It's radio, so what can you say? It's curvy. Oh. And that curviness of the script, I found out was because they wrote on palm leaves, and they wrote really small on palm leaves. And if you do right angles on palm leaves, you crease the leaf, you break the cell wall of the leaf. And so these scripts became curvy because you could write on palm leaves in a really small way that lasts actually for centuries. But anyway, I was walking with a fellow down the road, and the houses generally have nameplates, which is not uncommon. You can see that in Malta You can see that in, I think, sometimes in Italy or like a Mediterranean area. But anyway, there's a perfect circle sphere, silvery circle with a beautiful word that has one of my favorite letters, which kind of looks like a big tree. It has like it goes and loops and then has a middle stalk and then loops again and then comes down again and with a dot above it. It's like a pretty big letter and with lots of loops, which apparently is the sound three.
Right.
Yeah, and so then I didn't know what that house name was because I've studied a little bit now, so now I think I could look at my like little chart, and sound it out. But I just was lazy and I posted it on Facebook and I said, "Hey, is there any Malayalam friends that can tell me what the meaning, of this word is?" And some fellow, which I'm not even sure who it is, he just wrote, "Oh, it's just a name." And I just thought, well, that's a funny thing, because any word, any noun, anything is just a name, obviously. And so I just thought it was like somebody being kind of cynical and, oh, that's not special. It's just a name. But then what I found out from the fellow who I was staying, he explained to me that it's the word kritika, which is actually the Pleiades. It's a star system of the 7 stars, the 7 sisters. So and they use it in the Vedic, here in Kerala, there's a lot of Vedic, ancient kind of Hindu, with this, I forget the name, but astrology and whatnot. And so they had named the house, essentially it's the Pleiades. And so I thought, well, like, that's just a name, like, okay, like it doesn't mean anything. It's just a name. It's just the Pleiades. Well, it's just like, could be anything. Like Adrian is just Adrian. It's just a name. It's like, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And actually then it like triggered a whole bunch of stuff. And I thought, well, in Buddhism, you have this nama rupa, which is ancient. Nama rupa means like everything is nama rupa, which just means name and form. And it's just it's kind of a argument to explain how everything is so vastly interconnected that there's nothing, it's like empty of self-importance because it's all interconnected. And so something just being a name, it just shows how everything, that name is as empty as any other name, then like whatever. India is just a name. Kerala is just a name. All these things are just names. They're not by themselves important. They're only maybe important in relationship to everything else. Anyway, that's just kind of in a nutshell. And it just started, it kind of, as I was making this piece, I was putting together all these field recordings, and it so happened that I created 7 pieces. Yep. So it's like 7 things. Hey, pause.
Yes.
The food delivery is here.
a delivery has just arrived. Amazing. What service in the jungle in Western India? Hello from Berlin to you.
That's my friend. He's talking in Europe. You want to say hello?
Hello. Hello.
Hi, fine.
Greetings.
Kanish. His name's Kanish.
Kanish. Oh,
Kanish.
Greetings, Kanish.
He says hello from Berlin. He brought me some. Thank you, Kanish.
Fantastic.
Okay. See you then. Good night. Kanish and his wife make nice homemade food. Even I got up early one morning and he gave me a cooking class.
Oh yeah.
I learned to make karal curry, which is a chickpea, kind of a South Indian chickpea curry, using the fresh nutmeg and mace from the trees here, and coconut.
Fantastic.
Everything's with coconut here. They have the dosas and the basically dosa and putu. That's a really great one. It's fermented rice with coconut that's steamed into these like kind of little patties.
Lovely.
That
So maybe while you're feasting, we can play one of your tracks from, I was going to say the album with no name, but actually that's not the name of it.
It's just a name.
It is just a name from Michael Northam. And there's 7 tracks here, so I think probably we can go from number 1, Fleeting Memory number 1, in fact. Is there anything you want to say about this particular track?
It gives a hint of where I was before.
Okay, the place with no name, we shall not be named. The place that must not be named. That's very Harry Potter.
And I was visiting a ceremony, and I recorded kind of incidental during the main part of the ceremony. That different ladies would get up and sing songs, and people were eating. And but I recompiled. Part of this work is like, what I like to do is recreate spaces. I use field recordings, but then I use field recordings from different locations, so that then you get the sense of like a whole kind of surrealistic place.
Okay, so I'm going to be playing Fleeting Memory #1 from the album It Is Just a Name by Michael Northam. And here we go. You're listening to Radio 1 Berlin, and today we have a very special guest, Michael Northam, who's currently residing on the southern tip of India, West Coast. Michael, you're having your dinner now, which was delivered to you in your bamboo hut. How is it?
I know, I'm just laying here and listening to the evening sounds. I'll have it afterwards. You know, I don't think I could navigate the communication and the South Indian food at the same time.
Yes. And that track we just listened to was, of course, from your album, It Is Just a Name, entitled Fleeting Memory Number 1.
Yeah, this whole thing was just totally like during my recovery, I wanted to make an offering for people who reached out and helped me during that time. So I kind of haven't adapted very well to the digital age. I miss having record labels communicating to me, asking to release some new CD. I'm from that kind of generation.
Yes.
That would always like inspire me to do stuff. Even nowadays, it's just like files being shuffled around to the internet, and you know, you never know how people are listening to things.
Yes, indeed. I looked you up on the net, of course, and I found you on IMDb. But I thought IMDb was connected with film.
Right before the whole COVID situation, I worked with Anirban Datta from Kolkata, and he has this kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but his films are production house, or the things that he's been doing is under the name Amnesiac Films.
Oh.
And he does a lot of really curious, how to say, like intuitively constructed documentaries about, like, for example, the history of Kolkata or the like origin of the internet. There's like this really interesting parallel story of the internet being designed in India, and then IBM bought a lot of that information. And so he has a film called Infomotion, which is about the origins of the internet in Indian kind of science community. And he claims that Herzog even kind of ripped him off with his film, which was, what was Herzog's film? It was called Lo and Behold.
Oh, I don't remember that one. I was a massive fan of Werner Herzog as well, and I don't know this one.
Lo and Behold is Herzog's take on the origin of the internet. He claims that Herzog might have seen it.
Appropriated.
You know, but anyway, he made a film that I did the complete sound design for called Shamans of the Streets, which is a kind of an overview and history of like street performance art in India. And that also has, because he kind of has some controversial information. He did, in his history of Kolkata, he had a whole section of the film which happened to be an interview with his father, and his father was just stating the fact of certain kind of revolutionary activity that happened in the 60s, and there's certain taboos about that in Indian media and whatnot. And I saw, or he sent me that, like, on the equivalent of Indian CNN, you know, they're like, Anirban Datta is being tried for treason for creating anti-national films. So his films are often kind of include interesting, provocative, or apparently provocative, not necessarily. It's mildly provocative from my opinion. But anyway, so the Shamans of the Streets, I guess, has some stuff. So it's been going through like editorial process, but it should be being published within this, like, I think it's this National Indian Documentary Archive thing. But that's one of the recent things that I've done. And there was a film that he wanted to do that kind of got waylaid because of the whole COVID thing.
I'd like to play another one of your tracks from your album, It Is Just a Name. I mean, I'd love to play them all. It's just not, I don't think it's possible on this show. And also, it's good to leave people wanting more as well. So we will announce where people can get hold of this in the future, or maybe this is very exclusive for
this is actually meant to be an exclusive one, at least for now. Don't help me, but this is a nice preview of, and maybe it will inspire me to do something again.
Yeah.
With the recent material.
Well, track number 3 on the album is Intimate Vastness. And this is, I mean, they're all beautiful, but I really want to get into this one. So you're listening to Radio 1 Berlin, interviewing the sound artist Michael Northam, currently recovering in India, and this track, Intimate Vastness, we're about to play now. You're listening to Radio On. That was Intimate Vastness from the album It Is Just a Name from Michael Northam. And if you've just joined us, we're doing a direct link from Berlin to the southern western side of India, where I believe it's sunset or past sunset now, Michael?
Dark now.
Well, that was the perfect soundtrack. It's such a vast sort of landscape of sound. I'm really drifting on it.
Nice. I'm curious how people respond to it. I sent it to a bunch of people. I have no idea about what I do, actually. So
right. Interesting. What's your kind of feeling? With this one, it really feels like kind of desert plains. And first I was on a boat. You were describing someone outside that was there's a river by the side of you, and someone was drifting along on it. Or that was the feeling I got from this, and being surrounded by all this kind of insects and everything else. And then I was kind of on this kind of desert plain.
Yeah, I don't know, time and space. I don't have a preconceived notion about it. It's sure. I still work under the idea that I've had since a long time, since the 90s. I think I would write about it, this idea of, instead of being a composer, to be a composter. So I'm taking sound and making it into like compost, and then that's just being shoveled into your brain, and you're the listener is, doing whatever they do with it. I mean, to be honest, I get really exhausted by like clever sound art composers that have all neat little compositional tricks, and I kind of more and more kind of into this kind of genre that's similar to maybe a little bit like the minimalists. I'm probably a little bit of inheriting that because I spent so much time in the desert, in the wood, driving. I like driving across big open spaces. So
your website is orogenetics.com. Can you say something about that?
The orogeny is like basically a time period, like when mountains or formations, geologic formations are making. I had found like a dictionary about geological terms. And I was in a period of time there in the 90s, like all my sound stuff was all using technical terms from geology, and I wanted to make some kind of label or some kind of idea about what I was doing, and I tried to remember the word orogeny, but I got it wrong, and I said, oh yeah, orogenetics. And then I realized that's not a real word. It doesn't exist. It's taking the word genetics and this orogeny and kind of creating. There is a word orogenic, but not genetic. And so anyway, so then I just left the mistake, and I kind of had this idea of like the secret life of mountains, the kind of living quality of, and then the epicness of what I was really interested in is like kind of large time frames. And so I just thought I would go with it, and I've gone with it ever since. Like it was like since 1994 or something. And briefly there were other people kind of using the name, or when I worked with John Grisnick or Seth Nehill or whatever, and I think that we had in Austin, Texas, kind of adopted that briefly, but then it just carried on with it. But I called my website that, which is not very good marketing plan, but anyway, because it's an obscure esoteric name that nobody really gets. I'm kind of at odds with this whole, I talked to some friends in the US, and they're just, everybody's kind of all into this marketing thinking, oh, you have to market yourself, you have to sell, you have to put your, you have to get people to know who you're. And I've never ever since I've done this kind of thing, that's kind of the antithesis of what I'm into. Like I've always felt it's this kind of hermetic process. And maybe somebody's into it, maybe not, who knows, I don't know. But it was nice to do this recent thing because I hadn't done it for a while, and I had been teaching here in kind of dumbing down what I am into a language that is more generic. And in this recovery period, I just thought, well, it's really good to hold on to my original eccentric views of reality and create with new technology from the, like basically I'm trying to work in the same kind of way that I worked 20 years ago, but now I can do this in the jungle on an iPad or
Amazing.
something like that. I don't have to have all this different equipment, and people talk down about software, synths, and all this like fetishizing hardware. But I think it's a socioeconomic question. I think that when you have enough money and you're fixed in a house and you want to collect a bunch of gear, and that's great. It's fun, but like I've said, I've been living in places where people have grown up with no equipment, and so my own personal compromise is to work. I've been trying to work with iPads or whatever, which initially, I was stuck for a while in India with just a phone, like an iPhone, and I learned that I could start creating some interesting sounds just fiddling around with apps. But now it's quite intense. Like I even just downloaded this ID 700. It's the brain of the Bukola 700 synthesizer.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think I just sent you that bamboo nesting.
Yes.
That was just yesterday using a field recording of exactly the place where I'm at using this Bukola synthesizer.
We can play this track now, actually, if that's fine with you. And this is really fresh out of the oven, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, it's a generative thing. So I just had it basically going by itself with a field recording from early morning, like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, just here on the patio.
And for those who've just joined us, Michael, you're on the western side of India.
The top of Sri Lanka is where I'm at.
And that's your recording studio there.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of this kind of portable equipment, is the recording studio can be anywhere. When we worked on the sound design for the documentary film here in India, we just worked in Goa in just a kind of random apartment in a fishing village. And for me, it's like that's a kind of fun thing, is to be the nomadic sound designer.
Great.
But as I say, it would be really fun if there were people out there that wanted nomadic sound design. But one never knows.
Yes. So, bamboo nesting. Here we go. You're listening to Radio 1 Berlin, and our guest today is Michael Northam, and that was his latest track. I think it was actually just finished this morning, Bamboo Nesting. Michael, thanks again for joining us today. I think we're actually stopping you from having your dinner, which was delivered to you in the jungle there.
There was a little bit of a miscommunication. So it was just one fried banana, a couple carrots, and some chips. It's okay. Thanks for having me on, and greetings from a little bit of kind of a backwaters nowhere.
It's incredible that you're there and you're convalescing from your operation, and you're still creating, and you were saying it's a kind of time in between.
No, literally, like, I have no place to live anywhere in the world, so I don't have any place to return to, and I have no place that I'm coming from. And so I have seriously, doubts about returning to the US, and nowhere to go to in Europe, and nothing really exactly happening for me here. And so it's more than in between at the moment. So I have to create something again from nothing, which I've done several times before, but it's after this recent hospitalization, it's a little bit exhausting at this point. So that's the scoop there. And
how can we find out about your work, Michael, or how can we contact you?
Well, through, I guess, all these social media ways, and or email, which is just my last name dot first name @gmail.com. Yeah, great to hear from anybody. Anyway, thanks for having me on. And
it's a total pleasure. We're so lucky. Radio 1 is so lucky to have this connection. And I wanted to play us out with one of the 7 tracks on your album, It Is Just a Name, by Michael Northam here. And it's called Changeling Methang OK Piri Temple, which is a curious name.
The place where it was recorded, partially. So...
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. And this will be going out as a podcast on all major platforms, as they say. And visit us on www.radioonberlin. And wherever you are in the world, have a good vibration. And thank you for listening, of course. So we'll just play out with track number 7 from Michael Northam's album, It Is Just a Name. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us today, and we'll be in contact soon.
Definitely. All the best.
So you have been listening to Radio 1 Berlin with our guest Michael Northam, who's currently in the hot, humid backwaters of Kerala in India. This will be going out as a podcast on all major platforms, so contact us. Find out about Radio 1 through our website, www.radioonberlin.com. Thank you very much for listening. Good day.
You have been listening to Radio 1 Berlin. Yeah.